Now, 1 year on from Turkey's deadliest earthquake in modern times, protesters have clashed with police in the southern province of Hatay. Thousands of people had originally gathered in the city of Antakya for a vigil for the 1 year anniversary of the major quake, which killed more than 50,000 people in Turkey alone and displaced millions. Demonstrators say the government has neglected their region since. The 7.8 magnitude quake struck southeastern Turkey and parts of Syria. Our correspondent, Julia Hahn, filed this report from Antakya.
This is what remains of the once bustling city of Antakya. Abandoned apartment buildings line the roads, reminders of a life that no longer exists here.
A year has passed since the quakes, and in many places they're still busy demolishing damaged buildings and clearing the rubble. This neighborhood used to be home to thousands of people, but just look around, it's almost entirely gone.
A year ago, two powerful earthquakes battered southeastern Turkey. They destroyed or severely damaged some 300,000 buildings across 11 provinces. Experts say construction safety codes had been ignored on a grand scale. Some lives could be rescued, but many couldn't. Today, the official death toll stands at more than 50,000. These graves in Antakya, a monument to pain. Abdurrahman Dashtioğlu lost his brother and his mother. He himself was trapped under the rubble for more than a day, he tells me.
When I managed to get out after more than 30 hours, it looked like the apocalypse had happened. No one knew what to do. Everyone had lost someone. And the state wasn't there for us. There was no help.
A year later, hundreds of thousands in the disaster-hit region are still holding out in containers and other temporary shelters. Like Melik Dashtelen, who invites me into her improvised kitchen. She's been living here for almost a year with her husband and two children. I can't get used to this. I had a big house, I had everything. And now I don't know what will happen, what will become of my kids. With all the rain and the cold, I sometimes tell myself, God, I wish we had died too as a family. Shortly after the quakes, President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan made bold promises to swiftly rebuild across the region.
Our goal in the first phase is to complete 319,000 homes and village houses within a year and hand them over to their owners.
But reconstruction is progressing slower than promised. At this building site on the outskirts of Antakya, Mustafa Aslan and his team are racing to get the first few thousand apartments ready in February. He attempts to explain the delays.
The biggest problem right now is the rain. It's been raining heavily in the region. But we're working non-stop to make sure our earthquake victims can move in as soon as possible.
Billboards like this one have sprung up across the city. New homes, new jobs, a future. That's the Turkish government's big promise. But as much as people here want to believe in it, many have little hope that life in their city will soon return to how it was before.
Many shop owners are improvising. They sell from containers now, but most of their former customers are either dead or displaced.
We decided to do something on our own to make ends meet. Life has to go on. We hope that Antakya will soon get back on its feet.
They say everything will get better, but I'm not sure. I think it'll take 10 or 15 years to rebuild this city.
I'm a mother of 4 children. I'm fighting for them. We have to hold on somehow. At least we are still alive. That means there is hope. And that hope is a crucial building block for the future amid the ruins of Antakya.
Well, 1 year later, is there any accountability here? To talk about that, I'm joined now by Emma Sinclair-Webb. She's a senior researcher for Human Rights Watch Turkey. She joins us tonight from Istanbul. Emma, it's good to have you with us. We've heard in that report that building standards, building codes were ignored in that region before the quake happened. So 1 year later, do we know who is to blame for what we saw happen when the ground shook?
Well, yes, thank you for having me. I mean, families throughout the earthquake region are demanding justice for the appalling building standards that turned their homes, hospitals, all kinds of hotels and other public buildings into graves when the quake struck. And justice is proving to be very difficult in Turkey because while there are ongoing trials of real estate developers, technical teams, private contractors, there are currently no trials yet of public officials who are responsible for green lighting construction projects, are responsible, have a duty of oversight and inspection, and issue building licenses. And
Emma,
that is the missing ingredient currently from the trials.
I wanted to ask you about that. You know, they have said these code inspectors for the municipalities, they have said that they didn't know anything about the lack of safety measures in the buildings that they approved. How credible is that?
Well, I mean, it's not credible. And basically, they have a responsibility to find out what is happening with the building. A contractor can come with a project and gets a technical team to provide the project. The municipality and also the provincial authorities in the Ministry of Environment and City Planning have a responsibility of oversight. They have to check at every level whether the project is being implemented according to the right standards. There are also, privately contracted inspectors as well. But ultimately, it must come down to public authorities to sign off on buildings by issuing the final license that they're fit to live in, that they're for occupancy. And what we see in many of the areas, including the area that Julia Hahn visited, was that many buildings didn't even have licenses of occupancy. That's a terrible indictment of the public authorities.
And shouldn't it be in the government's, the local government, national government's interest for building safety codes to be met? It doesn't appear that that is the case. How do you explain that? Well,
I mean, I think this is what needs to come out in a full investigation. What we have to get, the first stage we have to get to is permission for public authorities to be investigated by the prosecutors. And Turkey has an old law, unfortunately, which means that in order to investigate a public official, you have to get permission from the state. So there has to be administrative permission given first. Now that can easily become a recipe for impunity. What we want is that the permission should be given. The prosecutors should be able to go ahead with their prosecutions or proper investigations. And then in the trials of the real estate developers and others, we need the public authorities to be present in the trials too, in some cases as defendants. But without a proper investigation into them, this is lagging behind all other efforts at justice, and it is going to hamper the trials eventually of the developers, because the developers are likely to say, and they're already saying in their defense,
yes,
the municipality gave me permission. I built this building with a permit from the municipality. So there's going to be a lot of people passing responsibility on to others.
And I know that reconstruction in that area is going a lot more slowly than was promised by President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan. The buildings, though, that are being rebuilt, is there any way that people can be sure that these new buildings are going to be any safer than the house of cards that fell down a year ago?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think, Turkey over the years has developed better and better building standards and regulations. But this is a patchwork of regulations that extends back years. It's a very complicated legislation around building, complicated regulations. And adherence to these regulations, it can only be done, it can only be guaranteed if people are brought to justice. And this is a forward-looking ask because Turkey's going to have many more earthquakes. Has a high risk of earthquakes.
Yes.
Istanbul may have a huge earthquake soon, and so this is not just for the victims. This is for the whole country that this needs to change. Construction standards have to be upheld and enforced by proper inspection, and people have to take responsibility. And only by being brought to justice will that really ever happen.
Emma Sinclair with Human Rights Watch Turkey. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Emma, we appreciate your time and your analysis tonight. Thank you.
For more on earthquakes in that region, we can talk now to Marco Bohnhoff. He's with the German Research Center for Geosciences, the GFC in Potsdam. Thanks for being with us. Professor, what lessons have been learned from that devastating earthquake that struck Turkey and Syria a year ago?
Yeah, good morning. There are a number of lessons that were learned. First of all, most importantly, earthquakes don't kill people, buildings do. So the buildings code that were already modernized were not applied in all cases, which caused most of the fatalities. But from the research point of view, we did learn a lesson in that we analyzed data using modern technology like machine learning and AI. And that tells us that there has been what we call a preparatory process that lasted a couple of months, starting 8 months before the earthquake. That was not enough to tell the people deterministically there will be one big earthquake on that or that day. But it was enough to state that the probabilities increase, and that could give information at hand to better organized troops to save lives afterwards. But earthquake determination remains an open issue in research as of today.
So where would you say that we stand now in terms of our ability to predict earthquakes? Is science getting any better at it?
Well, we're getting better, but it's a slow process because the processes we're studying, they occur deep below our feet. That means we have no direct access in contrast, for example, to weather forecast or so, but we going step by step, for example, bringing Earth to the lab where we perform controlled experiments on rock specimen. And from these experiments, we can actually learn that in principle, it's possible to see phenomena like foreshocks or preparatory processes systematically. Now, bringing that observations to the Earth scale, warning cities like Istanbul or others, is a long way. We started that by implementing better instrumentation technology, for example, close to Istanbul, monitoring 24/7 and looking for these signals that we do see in the lab. We are not, we are optimistic, but it's still a long way to go. As I said, as of now, nobody can really predict earthquakes.
Given that, we accept that nobody can really predict, as you say, but how great would you say, given your very careful analysis of the data from around the region, how great would you say that the risk of further earthquakes is in the region?
Well, talking about Istanbul, it's not the question if, but rather when. So, and alternatively to earthquake prediction, there's also a term called earthquake forecasting. That means we can collect all available information to estimate the probability. So giving a certain percentage of an incoming earthquake for a certain time period. And that is, as of today, the best we can. And that, for example, includes also water level changes, because water level changes can induce seismicity. It also includes phenomena that we call slow slip, that are slow earthquakes occurring in the underground, and it is known that these slow slip events can also cause bigger earthquakes. So what we're trying to do is to develop something that we call an operational forecasting system that would collect all this information, and that can result in increasing or decreasing probabilities for certain regions, for certain times, which we would give the local authorities at hand. Of course, issuing a warning is a different ballgame, because if you issue an earthquake warning, you have also financial losses. You have to run down economy and so on. So that is an untrivial task, of course. So that remains to be a decision that can only be made by local authorities.
So just one quick question then regarding, say, Istanbul. Should people around Istanbul be bracing for an earthquake within the next 10 years, say?
Well, the best we can say today is that the probability for a big earthquake close to Istanbul in the next 30 years is about 70%.
Okay.
That sounds mathematical, but it's the best we can say, and it's a high number.
It is. Marco, thank you very much for your assessment. That was Professor Marco Bohnhoff from the German Research Center for Geosciences in Potsdam.
Thank you.